Does the Hebrew word rosh, head, translate to kephale in Greek? And does that even matter? So the quick answer to the question, does the Hebrew word rosh, head, translate to kephale in Greek, is almost always and sometimes never. Now for those of you who like technical teaching, you will love this next part. The rest of you, just hang with us. We're going to move into some technical language about choices of words in Bible translations. This understanding will give us a frame of reference into the earliest scholars and translators and what certain words meant to the original audience. This understanding into the context will then help us not have wrong understanding that actually limits and slows the Great Commission. The LXX, the Septuagint, is the earliest translation of Old Testament Hebrew scriptures into the Greek language. LXX, as you may know, is Latin for 70, and it represents the 70 or 72 scholars who completed the work in the 2nd century BC. The Septuagint gives a glimpse into how the early church defined and understood terms like kephale, head. So have you heard of Rosh Hashanah? It means New Year, head of the year, the beginning of the year. That's a figurative definition of rosh. These words give us a clue into how the Greek writers understood the word kephale, and we deal with that in the New Testament.
The pivotal question we are going to ask right now is this: how often did the Septuagint translators translate the Hebrew Old Testament word rosh to the Greek word kephale? In other words, were rosh and kephale used the same way? The Old Testament Hebrew text used the word rosh a total of 419 times. These can be divided into two distinct categories when translated into the Greek Septuagint. First, the physical head. When the Old Testament Hebrew rosh referred to physical head, the Septuagint translators chose the Greek word kephale 226 out of 239 times. So, this matches what we have stated earlier. The most common translation of the Greek word kephale is the physical head.
Almost always.
So, the figurative head. The Hebrew rosh was translated figuratively 180 times by the Septuagint translators. In Hebrew, the word rosh means ruler or leader. When rosh was used figuratively, what word did the Greek translators choose to use? When the figurative definition of rosh for leader was needed, did they choose kephale as their Greek word, or did they choose another word? The figurative word rosh, which means ruler or leader, was only translated kephale 5% of the time, or 8 out of 180 times in the Septuagint. So they used it that way very rarely.
Hardly ever.
What was the breakdown of the 180 uses of the figurative use of rosh in the Old Testament when translated into the Greek Septuagint? They used 14 different words.
Okay, hang with us. We're going to give you some Greek words and describe how many times the rosh was translated into that word. This is important because we want to see how often rosh made it into kephale when used figuratively. When the rosh meant ruler or commander or leader, did they translate rosh to kephale? No. They translated it into archon 109 times out of 180. That's a lot, 61% actually. So if rosh meant captain or leader or chief or prince, did they translate rosh into kephale? No. They chose archigos 10 times. What about if rosh meant authority or magistrate or officer? Did they translate rosh into kephale? No. 9 times they chose arche. What about if it meant to be a leader or to have rule or have dominion? Did rosh translate into kephale? No. 9 times they chose hegeomai. Or What about if rosh meant first or foremost? Did they choose kephale? No, they chose protos. I can give you some more words. Patriarches, kiliarches, archephules, archipatriartes, archo, megas, megale, progeomai, prototokos. Many words like that. The point is, almost always they chose a word different than kephale when they were translating from Hebrew into Greek. Now they did choose kephale a few times, 18 times to be exact, but some of those were from a variant text. Some of those were the head-tail metaphor, like Israel should be the head and not the tail. It's still a body imagery. It's still kephale as in physical head, but they translated rosh into kephale. Actually 8 times. 8 times they translated rosh into kephale, meaning leader or top or crown. And of course, there were 6 times they didn't even translate rosh at all. So these are the 180 times that rosh was translated from the Hebrew into the Greek. Now, if kephale meant boss, leader, or authority, we would expect that the Septuagint translators would use it the majority of times, whenever rosh is used figuratively. However, as Leslie said, only 5% of the time, 8 out of 180, kephale meant leader in the Septuagint. To indicate a leader with authority, the Septuagint did not use kephale as the appropriate Greek word 95% of the time. The amazing Greek language has many, many words to indicate leaders with authority, and the Septuagint made use of those other words. 14 words, 13 other words besides kephale, 95% of the time. So, I'm glad you hung with us. This demonstrates and confirms that the Greek audience did not usually think of kephale meaning leader or authority. When they read kephale, they did not think of that. So the New Testament definition of source, origin, where something comes from, the beginning point, flows much more accurately. So God is consistent. And we're finding that the translators were also consistent in their understanding of the Greek language in the first centuries of the early church.
Okay, take a deep breath. Your eyes are probably really round and wide right now. Your mouth is probably hanging open. You're probably scratching your head and you're asking the question,
Who cares?
What does this really matter?
Is this important?
It actually matters a lot. The way we understand the word head in the New Testament determines how we understand leadership. In various teachings, we will be referring back to the word kephale, and you want to keep these different understandings of the definitions in your mind so that you can correctly understand the text and apply them.
So with this information, take a few moments and think. What does this teach you about the character and nature of God? What does it show you about the character and nature of people? What is one thing you can do to obey? And who can you share this with? Until all know, run with it.